Across the country, a growing number of landlords are refusing to participate in the Section 8 program, but New Hampshire has a bill proposed that would force landlords to do it. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have a couple of interesting articles for you today, and they're going over the issue of Section 8. Okay, so as you know, a lot of landlords, they just don't want to participate in the Section 8 program due to all of the government bureaucracy, the hoops that you have to jump through, and the awful tenants that some of them have dealt with before that were Section 8 tenants. So now it is a new trend where these states are throwing out these laws and bills that would force landlords to take on these Section 8 tenants. And that's exactly what the state of New Hampshire is trying to do. Now, I don't agree with forcing a landlord to take a Section 8 tenant. The program is supposed to be voluntary, yet here they are trying to force your hand. And it could put a landlord in a bad situation if they end up with a tenant in there that they don't want. Now, before I get into these two articles, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know if you or the state that you're living in has proposed forcing landlords to accept Section 8 tenants, or if your state already has a law like that in place. So yeah, I mean, it's such a new thing nowadays. I'm not surprised at all that we're seeing more and more of this. I know that the funding package or the bill that was proposed in Washington D.C., Build Back Better, had a whole bunch of Section 8 stuff in it, and one of the things they were trying to do was encourage more landlords to accept the tenants and accept the vouchers, right? And so the only way that they could think of doing that was by basically cash bonuses to landlords. And I'm in favor of that, honestly, right? You have to sweeten the deal. There has to be an incentive for a landlord to accept Section 8 and jump through all those extra hoops, okay? And the market rate rent, no, you got to pay probably at least over the market rate rent, maybe 125% of the market rate rent, and then throw bonuses too on top of that. And then a lot more landlords will want to participate. Believe me, money will make it a lot better of a program. And I know that's not the way the program is supposed to be, but when you're talking about a lot of these programs are paying under market rate rent and, making you jump through all these hoops. Well, guess what? We end up with the situation we have right now where a lot of landlords don't want to participate. So the first article I have today, it's coming from KOB.com, and it says, growing number of New Mexico landlords unwilling to accept vouchers. And yeah, this story is about New Mexico, but it really has to do with, places all over the country, because the landlords all over the country, they think very similarly to the way they do these landlords in New Mexico do. So let's get into it. A growing number of New Mexico landlords are unwilling to accept transitional housing vouchers. Housing is an essential step in getting folks off the streets, and there are many different programs to help people. This fiscal year, the city of Albuquerque will dedicate more than $11 million to the Supportive Housing Voucher Program, an amount that could serve an estimated 1,000 households. Households choose an apartment that they would like to live in, and then if the landlord accepts them as a tenant, the household pays 30% of their income towards the rent, and then the voucher helps to pay for the rest of the rent, says Lisa Huval, CABQ, Deputy Director of Housing and Homelessness. As I mentioned before, I have Section 8 tenants in some of my units in my duplexes that I own in Kansas City. So I am not opposed to Section 8, but there's a reason why all of my tenants aren't Section 8, okay? Because there are more hoops that you have to jump through, okay? And the tenants that I have, they're good tenants. They pay their portion of the rent every single month on time, and I'm glad about that. But in a lot of cases, landlords are dealing with tenants that just aren't doing that. So what they end up with is, they're barely getting this government portion, and then they have to go through an eviction process with a Section 8 tenant, and that's ridiculous, okay? So, yeah. Huval says the pandemic has strained the rental market. There are fewer openings, and landlords have become more selective. I have a complex where we've traditionally housed quite a few of our veterans, and I have 5 veterans right now who are going to be displaced by the end of the year, said Jewel Kessler-Fike. KOB4 heard from Kessler Fike, in charge of transitional housing at the Veterans Integration Center earlier this month. She says those with vouchers of any kind are becoming harder to place. Multiple apartment complexes are being bought out by corporations, and they're becoming less local. These places are not wanting to accept vouchers from the VA, not from Section 8, not from anywhere. So people are becoming displaced, said Kessler Fike. And that's another situation right there, okay? So all of the stuff that has been attacking mom and pop landlords lately has meant that a lot of these mom and pop landlords who own these smaller apartment complexes, who maybe own the older apartment complexes, they're selling out, okay? And most people, they're like, oh, who cares if a landlord has to sell? Well, when a small landlord such as me sells, sometimes we are selling to these big corporate out-of-state landlords, and they're a lot more strict on their rules. So in this case, they're not accepting Section 8 vouchers, while the smaller landlord was, because they were more willing to work with those types of tenants. So yeah, this can basically make affordable housing harder to find for a lot of people, and they are just figuring this out right now. But if you remember, I went over a little while back, New Mexico was one of those states that had the longest state level eviction moratorium. So landlords were getting punished there. Just simply put, landlords were getting destroyed because they couldn't evict these bad tenants. And now they're sitting here complaining, well, where's the affordable housing going? Well, you destroyed it. You destroyed the affordable housing, and now you wonder why landlords don't want to participate in these programs? They got to make their money back, and this is the only way they can do it. So, yeah, a lot of landlords, they're just not participating in this stuff. But let's get into this second article, and it's coming out of New Hampshire, right? And it's from nhpr.org, and it says, New Hampshire lets landlords discriminate against renters using government vouchers. A new bill would change that. So yeah, there's another place that has one of these bills that will force landlords' hands, and it will be illegal for us to reject a tenant who has a Section 8 voucher. But let's see what the article says. I know I'm not going to be happy with it. A group of Democratic lawmakers want to make it illegal for New Hampshire landlords to discriminate against tenants participating in the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which is commonly known as Section 8. The Housing Choice Voucher Program provides financial assistance meant to help low-income tenants can use secure apartments on the private rental market. In New Hampshire's competitive rental market, local renters and housing officials have said it's increasingly difficult to find landlords willing to participate in the program. Part of the reason is that, hey, the market is super duper competitive, okay? So landlords are probably charging higher rents than Section 8 is even willing to pay. And even if they're not, guess what? Most Section 8 tenants, they're not going to have the best credit and the best finances, even if they have those vouchers, right? So if I run your credit and you have a whole bunch of bills that are in collections and, and you have just basically proven with your credit that you have a difficulty paying your bills, well, the tenant over here who applied, who doesn't have a Section 8 voucher, might have a credit that is great by comparison, right? And I'm going to take that tenant. Now, it has nothing to do with the fact that you have a voucher, but, I can still weed you out if it comes down to something like credit score or criminal history, So, hey, I mean, there's only so many ways a landlord can protect themselves, and saying that we no longer have the discretion to choose who we rent to or not, I mean, it pisses me off, okay? It just pisses me off. It shouldn't be legal, but let's continue. New Hampshire is the only state in the region where it's perfectly legal for landlords to refuse to rent to people depending on their source of income. Consequently, many local renters regularly encounter ads that explicitly discourage those using vouchers from applying. The new bill put forward for the 2022 session would prohibit New Hampshire landlords from refusing to rent to a tenant participating in the Housing Choice Voucher Program. It would, however, allow exceptions if the price of the landlord's unit is more than what the voucher allows, or if the unit doesn't meet the housing quality standards mandated by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So that that last little bit there, it kind of negates the whole problem right there. Okay, so if your unit doesn't meet the standards of HUD, well, you don't have to upgrade your unit. According to the law that they're proposing, the landlord won't have to upgrade their unit to meet the standards or anything. So you can still reject that tenant. And it says that if the price of your unit is higher than what HUD is willing to pay, guess what? You don't have to lower your price and accept that tenant. So they're giving landlords two outs. And so this bill, it seems like it's a feel-good bill, right? One that these politicians are going to use to try to get votes when it's not going to accomplish the desired goal. And when they said that this is one of the few places in that region that actually has no law that forces landlords to accept Section 8, that's very, very true. Up in the Northeast, almost all of those states, they're very, very liberal, and they have extremely strong tenant rights, and landlords are basically treated like garbage up there. So it actually is kind of surprising that they don't already have this law in place, but we'll see if it passes. For now, just know that, hey, this kind of thing is spreading throughout the country, and we're going to start seeing stuff like this in the Midwest. The fact that the other article I was reading was taking place in New Mexico, that just shows you just how this kind of stuff spreads.